What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with some macro data, on Wednesday and Thursday we have manufacturing. 50 is a key pivot. Anything above 50 shows more of an expansion. Anything below 50 shows more of a contraction. So that's going to be some big data for Chinese stocks. Aside from that though, it is going to be algorithmic trading really moving NIO, and that is through American data. So a lot of big data coming out this week that could impact the likelihood of a September cut. And then in addition to that though, companies unveiling the earnings. So algos will be in full force moving the broader market because of this. So we have a lot of big fintechs such as SoFi, PayPal, also Visa, Meta, Microsoft, Robinhood, Apple, Amazon. So a lot of big names, and so of course what they give for future guidance, as well as how their key metrics come in line with expectations. Market's going to move because of that. So definitely should be a very fun week. Aside from that though, it's going to be NIO's weekly registration numbers. That's the pretty much only thing that is planned to come out for NIO for this week. And to be fully fair, they have been improving week over week over the last two kind of reports, but still generally, I know a lot of people are not satisfied by them and want it to be a little bit higher. So we'll just have to wait and see how that does all play out. Aside from that, the only thing that's really come out over the weekend is just more news linked to the L90. So kind of good stuff, a lot of hype. That's one big attributing factor why NIO's really moved higher recently. But on a technical standpoint, I'm going to go over some absolute key levels to really watch for. But shorts. So going into this upcoming week, 11.28% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 174 million shares overall are being shorted. On Friday though, they did wake up. So I think their big plan was to really kill the momentum to ensure that it was going to close below $5. So they did increase 5.17 million. And as I mentioned in my Friday video, you had institutions really driving it up. So I think Friday is a very good kind of indication of what happens with NIO when big money buys in, and so it goes up very, very fast. At the same time, for those of you that think that shorts don't influence NIO, this right here is shorts getting involved. So clearly their intention was for it to close below $5, and that is linked to options. So I'm going to go over that in a second. But as far as going into this upcoming week, anticipate them to be fairly active. One thing to take note of though is that they have returned quite a lot. So Friday is essentially breaking that trend. So again, just keep that in mind. DTC is 3.97 days. So that does factor in average volume for NIO in comparison to number of shares being shorted. And through IBKR, going into this upcoming week, there is in excess of 10 million shares. So if shorts really did want to double down, they definitely can. So just be aware of that. Aside from that though, looking at the options from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that 5 to 550, so a nice push higher. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of between that 450 and 5. So with it exactly at 5, we are at a key pivot, even more so on a technical standpoint. But when it comes down to the manipulation, you had 39,000 at that $5 strike price. So that, unfortunately, and above all the above strike prices, all expire worthless. That's the downside of options. So that's why short did double down. But as far as last week, you had 14,000 at that 450, 9,000 at that 4, and there wasn't really any crazy transactions that did occur on the dark pool on Friday after hours. So it is fair to assume that market makers did not cover any of that. So you could potentially see a nice little initial bump up on Monday as market makers will cover that. But looking forward into this upcoming week, you have pretty much 22,000 at that 5, 12,000 at that 550, 14,000 at that 6, and then 13,000 at that 450. Typically within the first 2 trading days of the week, all of this will jump up by roughly about 20 to 40%. So definitely it's going to make for a very interesting Friday. Because of course by come Friday, if NIO is again close to that $5 range or 550 or 6 or even 450, you might see shorts try to manipulate it down as what they did on Friday. So let me know your thoughts on that, but this is generally some kind of key things to really watch for. Aside from that, with it at 492, it is trading right on this R1. So going into this upcoming week, 497 followed by 507 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. Flip side, you have 482 and then 473 as the support levels. So if you're wanting to average down, day trade, or whatever else, just take a mental note, but keep in mind 507 is a absolute key breakout level. So for whatever reason, earlier on in the week, if NIO is able to successfully close above, because it's gone above, but it always gets manipulated down. If it's able to close above 507, then it is fair to assume that you will be easily seeing roughly around that high $5s to $6 range in the short term. And that's without any essential news. If NIO, for whatever reason, is sitting on some news in their back pocket, then that could really push things higher. There isn't anything on a side note planned for this upcoming week regarding Chinese stimulus, so it is going to be pretty much everything that I mentioned. That's going to be some of the attributing factors, what's moving it. On the actual chart though, you have things somewhat okay, so it still is above the ALMA. Friday and Thursday were somewhat hit and miss, so you did have a lot of volatility, but nonetheless, 433 is that 200-day moving average, so that's going to be an element to kind of watch for. In my opinion, I don't really see that being touched unless there is some crazy stuff that does come out and that really spooks the broader market, but so far there isn't really anything planned. And even if some companies give some neutral bearish future guidance, which I don't really anticipate that to happen, then you might see a little bit of a pullback to, let's say, that 450 worst case scenario. But I think generally speaking, this upcoming week, you will see a very nice continued push higher. One thing to take note of though, stochastic RSI is considered very overbought. So first sign of weakness, you could see some negative volatility, as I mentioned. But I think the only thing that might come out is just the company's negative future guidance. So that might be kind of the only thing to really watch for. But let me know your general thoughts on NIO. Are you buying? Are you selling? Do you think that we are going to see a further breakout? And do you think that Friday did kind of wake shorts up out of their downtrend to really cause them to start getting back in? So let me know your general thoughts on NIO. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.